Welcome to the Sports Marketing Machine Podcast, the podcast for those working in sports looking to sell more tickets, sell more merchandise, and grow your fan base. I'm your host, Jeremy Nizer. Today, super excited to welcome the Director of Partner Success from Full House Solutions, Michael Brinkman. And Michael, welcome to the podcast. We're going to talk all about getting leads.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This will be a lot of fun. And I also wanted to mention, too, congrats on your 5,000 podcast downloads here recently.
Thank you, man. It's been an honor and a privilege to just show up every single week and just help teams sell more tickets. That's it. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's great. This will be
that.
fun.
Yeah. So let's before we dive into tactics and all this good stuff, let's talk a little bit about your background. How did you get to Full House? What is Full House? What do you do?
Absolutely. So I'll date myself a little bit. Back in 2000, I started minor league baseball. So that was in Las Vegas. At the time, it was the Las Vegas Stars AAA baseball team. While I was there, we became the 51s, and now you might know them as the Aviators. So it was a great 2 years there. Got to learn under John Spolstra and Steve DeLay, who are a couple of industry legends. So sold season tickets, groups. We built a picnic area down the left field line that we sold. We also sold some field suites that were directly behind home plate. So great opportunity for me to kind of learn in that market. And then from there, was dating my now wife in Minnesota at the time and wanted to get back to Minnesota. So was fortunate enough to start working for the Minnesota Wild and spent 9 years with the Wild. Our first year was the Western Conference Finals run, which I thought was all about me, but it wasn't. It was definitely the players on the ice that made that happen. But had a lot of highs and lows there. We had a work stoppage 1 year and the All-Star game and a number of things. Was mostly on the sales side there, and then opened up an inside sales team, and then also went over to the marketing team while I was there. So we can talk a little bit about that. While my daughter was born, actually from the hospital, decided to leave sports for the time being. We actually, I knew that the 44 game nights and a number of other networking events and things like that, it just wasn't the right suit for our family at the time. So started working for Target Corporation here in Minneapolis and worked on Target.com, Target Mobile, and Target Social. Worked on Cartwheel or Target Circle, I guess, if you know that today, with a number of brands, both in the beauty as well as the grocery side of the business. And then in 2014, decided to open up my own company called Digital Ticket. And over those few years, reconnected actually with Steve DeLay and John Spolstra and started working with them as the Vice President of Ticket Sales and the Ultimate Toolkit, but also connected again with Ron Contorno, who's the president of Full House Solutions. And I had purchased leads from him actually when I was with the Wild, and then started working with him quite a few years ago when I started opening up Digital Ticket. So been kind of a fun ride here with Full House, and it's been great working with a number of teams again.
So Full House right now, what are some of the products you guys offer? And we can dive into kind of why would people buy some of these things, but what are some of the products that you guys offer and how you help teams?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a full service agency kind of within the sports industry, I guess you could say. I mean, I give Ron a lot of credit. He started the company in Milwaukee and worked out of Chicago for a while, but he's currently based in Milwaukee again 25 years ago. And he originally started it as a lead and database company, specifically for the sports industry. And over those 25 years, we've worked with 1,000 plus teams and organizations in one form or another. And that includes 20 plus teams in each of the pro leagues, most of the minor league teams across the country. So it's been a great ride from that perspective. And it's evolved over these years. Again, so it started as a B2B, but we do a wide number of things, including direct mail campaigns is a big piece of what we do, and we can get into a little bit of that. But beyond that, we've also done a lot within the digital space here too. So it's been kind of fun to kind of evolve the company, as technologies have changed and adapt to the clients that we have.
So from a lead generation perspective, I always tell teams you need to grow your email list because that is still your number one highest ROI. Algorithms are going to change on social media. Things are going to change. But if you own your list, like it's yours. Like they can't take it. They can't change it. It's all yours. So if
Yep.
teams are thinking about, gosh, I know I need to go grow my email list. There's two ways to do this. You can grind it out, go out there and collect more email addresses by doing contests and all these different things, or you can buy a list, right?
Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, we've sat in that seat of the sales rep, and certainly. I mean, I'm going back to my Vegas days. My territory was Southwest Las Vegas, and you're out on appointments, meeting with CEOs and presidents, and you're looking at the trucks driving by on your way to the appointment to see which company and write the number down quick, or
Mm-hmm.
who's got the business offices next door. I mean, there's certainly canvassing and there's ways to kind of cultivate your own lists, but purchasing the list is by far the quickest and easiest.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's definitely some upside to just kind of being able to, keep that targeted to it, and build it and grow on it as you need to. But being able to purchase it and hand it to your sales team and let them kind of dive right in and work it and cultivate those leads is certainly the quickest way.
So if a team said, you know what, I like this idea. This is going to save us a boatload of time. It's actually probably going to be a little less expensive. What when they come to you and say, hey, Michael, I want to buy a list. What are some questions that you immediately ask them about buying a list?
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest key is kind of finding out their challenges, because every market, as we know in the sports world, is so different. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're talking minor league versus pro, the scarcity of your tickets currently, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into play there. Certain markets, really big, they try to use flex plans a lot, and there can be
Mm-hmm.
some pros and minuses to flex plans. Mini plans may or may not work. Full season packages may or may not work. So what does that start to look like? So for us, the big bread and butter, honestly, has been in the B2B and group category prospects. There's a lot of teams that focus a lot on their past buyers and their renewals that haven't come in, and how do I get those to win back single game buyers. There's benefits to all that,
Mm-hmm.
but some of the biggest low hanging fruit in terms of ROI and revenue for some of these teams that we've noticed is definitely within the B2B and group prospect space. So with those, we try to be very smart in terms of headquarters locations, 3+ employees, 5+ employees. You get into some of those big business categories of 20+ or 50+ or 100+ businesses. And then you start to drill down into those group categories of nonprofits, sports clubs, gymnastics, health clubs. What do all those start to look like? And what's that total universe in terms of prospects that are available in your market? You might work with 300 K through 12 schools in your market, but when you do a report on your market, there might be 1,000. So how
Mm-hmm.
do I identify those other 700 school prospects that you haven't had a chance to get to yet?
So let's talk about the accuracy of the lists, because that's probably going to be the number one question that teams will ask. Well, that's great. I can buy these lists. Number one, they're going to ask, well, how much is it? And then number two, how accurate is it? So let's talk about a little bit about the accuracy.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, like, no data is perfect, to be honest. So if you're purchasing it or filtering it through systems, I mean, there's definitely some things that will factor in. I don't mean to call out the brewers, but I received an email this morning where it said your brewers are in Minnesota. Well, interestingly, part enough is accurate. I'm in Minnesota, which is good. That part is
Mm-hmm.
accurate, but I'm not necessarily a Brewers fan. I'm a Twins fan who has gone to games in Milwaukee. And
Oh.
so for them to say your Brewers is kind of an interesting distinction in the data. So, what we generally tell teams is we get data from a number of different sources,
Mm-hmm.
and those sources are always constantly updating that. Since COVID happened, obviously, the companies have gone out of business. Contacts have changed pretty readily. So there's things that just constantly need to be updated, like as we're speaking, that
Mm-hmm.
data is being updated. So when we hand over a database, we generally tell teams that about 5 to 8% of that data is going to be inaccurate. So you think of 6 to 7 contacts out of 100 that we hand you may no longer be with that business. So then it's kind of up to that sales rep to kind of move on their feet and be able to ask, okay, so Bob or Susie is no longer here. Can you tell me who actually heads up the group events for your company?
Mm-hmm.
Or can you tell me who replaced that person with that business? So definitely ways for the sales team to kind of still roll with that data, but they just kind of know in the back of their mind that that person may no longer be there.
So if teams are thinking about this and they're saying, okay, I'm going to buy a list. The hit rate's going to be pretty good. We're going to get an 85, 90%. That would be marvelous. So where does this fit inside of our marketing funnel? Is this something that's like, hey, this is just a play for the sales team. This is where we're allocating dollars and see if we can turn this into group sales? Or can we use this more for single game? Could we use this for a bunch of different things? The ideas are endless, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, what we usually promote is we kind of call them multi-touch campaigns. So as you know from the sales side too, I mean, you're lucky if somebody picks up the phone or answers an email on your first try and says, "Yep, I'm in for season tickets." I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's very rare. You get a lot of no's, as we know, and it's a tough business from that perspective. And so how do we kind of slowly cultivate them along with the right type of messaging, the right type of targeting, and kind of build that relationship. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily just drill in the sales and we know you're ready for 2 season tickets type of thing. So how do we do that from a marketing perspective? And that's where we kind of help on for some of that campaign building and what does that strategy look like. So in many cases, that does potentially start out with a direct mail campaign. Mm-hmm. So obviously you start with your data and find out the targeted pieces that you feel like you don't currently have today. And then from there, how do we build that targeted message and strategy that layers in, like you said, multiple things. Mm-hmm. And, I've heard, I did a little bit of research, kind of like trying to find out the quick 2024 stats. And one of them that I read was 84% of marketers agree that direct mail provides their highest ROI of any of the channels they use today. While 82% of them, this is in 2024, 82% of those that responded say that they're going to increase their direct mail spend in 2024. I don't know what happened to those 2% in between there that think it's the highest ROI and not spending more.
Sure.
But that can be debatable. I mean, as we know as marketers with email and all these other channels, certainly debatable. But I think the one thing that direct mail does is it physically puts that brand in their hands. And there's some things that you can do with augmented reality and a bunch of fun things from the sports perspective now that can really make direct mail fun. And when they see a sports team in the mailbox, it's different than a plumber or an accountant or taxes or whatever. It's the local sports team. Yep. And so that's fun. And so whether it be a business or consumer side, we can kind of put that in their hands. So that's the first piece. And then from there, it's kind of on the sales team to be able to develop and cultivate those relationships. So you got the follow-up phone calls, followed by the follow-up emails, and then you're probably doing it again. So long story short, I mean, and I got some other examples we can talk about here, but one quick example is just in single A baseball alone, they didn't do a direct mail campaign. They just purchased a list. And the team that we work with spent, I think it was around $2,000 on a database. And they told me, they said they hit that list pretty hard. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well,
what does that look like?
I'd say we sold about $80,000 in season tickets off that. So they spent 2, sold 80. And so that's what we want to hear is how can we almost turn that into another sales rep for you? Or, you know what I mean? How can we have some success in the ROI perspective that lends to more for a team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's an anomaly. Not teams. If they come to you and say, "I want to do this, count me in," they're not gonna. There's no guarantee they're going to get that.
Right,
so, but
100%.
But on the high end, I mean, that's fantastic. I think about that just as a consumer, just in my own mailbox. I get a ton of emails, but I don't get as much mail anymore. So it's kind of shifted in the last 10 years, where I used to get boatloads of quote unquote junk mail, but now it's not that much mail that I actually get in my mailbox. It's my typical bills and stuff like that, birthday cards, and then a postcard like that would definitely stand out for sure. So
absolutely. And we try to do some fun things too, even with like the styles of the postcard based on the size. And we do a lot with plastic postcards these days. So they're a little thicker to stand out. We've done some for some NFL teams that are more of like a velvet soft feel. So when you start talking about like premium seats, it can have gloss to it or, shininess that basically kind of stands out in your mailbox and has a little more of a soft touch feel to it. So yeah, definitely some things from the ticket side that can make those unique.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go through an example, just for funsies here. You mentioned Steve, so I'm going to bring up, let's just say I work for the Macon Bacon, and I want to do a group mail campaign. We've got group sales guys. I got to get them some leads. I'm going to go to you and say, okay, get me some leads as some group sales folks. I'm looking for companies 20 or more. And you get the list. I pay for it. You send it to me. What should I do? What's the first thing I should do?
Once you have the database? Yeah. So literally then it's like whether or not you add a mailer to it is totally up to you. So you don't have to do that. Obviously there's print and postage and things that go with a mailer. So from a budget perspective, that's kind of where the decision comes from. But from there, honestly, it kind of depends on the team and how they divide those up. So do they divide by industry? Do they divide by territory? Or is it kind of open? And so the list that we provide back, they provide sales volume on the business side of things, as well as number of employees. So generally like a VP or a director of ticket sales will take that list and divide it by however many sales reps they have, and then kind of start their outbound campaign. So that's when the phone calls are starting, the emails are starting, and kind of, whatever approach you're taking towards, what's the hot ticket packages we have currently, the mini plans, the different package offerings that are working best for our market and our team. That's what we're going to focus on, and how do we kind of stay after those lists and then track it fully as well.
Perfect. Great idea. Let's talk group sales a little bit. What are some examples of some teams that you've worked with that have had some success, and kind of what was the angle or the pitch that they made within their postcard?
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of examples that maybe come to mind. A AAA baseball team that we worked with here recently, they had their 30th season.
Hmm.
And so what we did there is we actually pulled businesses in the market by anniversary. So 5, 10,
Wow.
15, 25-year-old companies, for example, and basically said, hey, it's your anniversary. It's our anniversary. Let's have a good time. And
Hmm.
so they showed kind of the suites and loge packages and things that they had available. That in that case, the assistant GM that I worked with, he called me back and said, you won't believe it. The mailer just hit. We've already sold 3 or 4 groups from it. And one of them was a 300-person group plus catering. So
Wow,
in
that's
that
a
case, they
good money
spent,
there.
yeah, exactly. They spent $4,400 on their data, printing, postage, everything. And in that case, it was $10,000 in one sale. Plus, they had some other hand raisers, and they
Hmm.
hadn't even started their outbound campaign yet. So those are kind of the fun ones. Like you said, it doesn't happen for everybody, but that's what we're trying to do: is how do we raise some hands in the market, but then allow you to have some good flexibility for your sales team to build upon that. Um, I would say that, you mentioned the Steve Delay side of things too. I mean, the big thing too is like what we try to do is the value add. Like, what can your team do that you have at your discretion that maybe other businesses in the market don't, that you can kind of stand out with? So, like, I think of things like first pitches. We had a
Hmm.
team basically try to schedule appointments with their mailer,
Hmm.
and what they were offering was, if you come down to the ballpark, we'll give your company a first pitch as a part of the season. And that's all we were asking for, is an appointment at the ballpark. Because as you know, once you get them there, show
Hmm.
them some seats, maybe give them a beer, give them a hot dog, then you have part of the hook done. And so what they were doing was just kind of using their mailer to come up with those hooks. And then from there, kind of draw them in and get those sales. So the last I talked to that team, they had like 75 or 80 appointments set from their from their mailer. So that's another good example. Um, so that's, as you think about value add and how do you set that up, I think those are good ways to do it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's such great examples. You don't have to always just do the flat out just group sales outreach. You can kind of get creative with some things. You can even do some single game things if you want. If you're trying to sell movie mini plans, like movers list, you probably have a list of people who are new in the community. What other types of lists could teams buy?
Yeah, absolutely. New movers is a pretty big one, actually. A lot of teams are interested in that because they feel like they've kind of beat the dead horse of the single game buyers list and
Hmm.
some others. So new movers are obviously fresh to your market. So we take a look at, like, by household income, move distance, distance from your venue, those types of things. We can kind of start to build that list out. So new movers is certainly something we can look at. We certainly look at things like interest in certain sports. So if you're a baseball team, hockey team, basketball team, we can find interest in sports based on survey data, past purchase history, those types of things. We look at, like, children present in the household, so if you're looking at mini plans and family offers, those types of things. Birthdays is another big one.
Hmm.
So if you have birthday packages you're trying to sell in certain months of your season, we can find, kids' birthdays in households. So a lot of different fun things, especially on the consumer side, but also too, even on the business side, we can do executive identifiers,
Hmm.
which is basically, like, we can look at reverse appending your data and kind of finding out where your current single game buyers work, for example,
Hmm.
which could lead to some good group prospect opportunities. In the college space, you can find out, VPs and directors of businesses near you that also graduated from your college.
Hmm.
So lots of different opportunities and upsides of different types of prospects to think about.
Yeah, and I just tell teams, just on your point there of kind of reversing the data, you just take a look at your single game buyer list and you take out all of their personal email addresses, your Gmails, your Yahoos, your Hotmails. All that's left are business email addresses, and businesses buy group tickets. So
Yep.
you can look through, and if ABC Supply Company is a ticket buyer, let me see if I can dig in to see who the contact is, or maybe you call the person who bought the ticket. That would give you that. But you just take it to the next level where you can get so much more data, even though the fan hasn't provided that, right?
Absolutely. And you can, yeah, that's the other thing too. You can append on certain pieces. So if you don't have the email, but you have, like, address information, for example, there's ways you can add pieces of that to your data set as well. But yeah, great point.
Man, this is so creative. You could do just about anything working with you guys on figuring out how to take data or buy some sort of data, buy a list to be able to target. But it's really up to the team's needs and wants, right?
It is, yeah, and it's honestly up to the teams to follow through too, which is kind
Yep.
of the crazy part. Like I ask about ROI a lot, and we do have some great ROI stories, but it is kind of up to the team for the follow up and really execution of the campaign once we kind of get it out the door and hand it over. So it certainly need kind of a trained sales team that can do some positive things with those leads. I will mention just a couple of quick success stories too, real quick. We had an NHL team that did a more premium campaign in their market, and they had an 8-to-1 ROI on their ticket program. And this is a team that has sold out game after game over the years and basically has a waiting list.
Hmm.
Speaking of waiting list, we had an MLB team that wasn't hearing back from their waiting list on calls or emails. So we recently actually did a mail campaign for them, and it did $1.2 million in ticket sales. So again, these are people on the waiting list. We know
Hmm.
they're engaged and interested, but they weren't following up by phone or email. So we thought that was pretty interesting to engage them by direct mail that way. And then just here in spring training, we work with another Major League Baseball team that has a STEM Day
Hmm.
group opportunity that's coming up here in late April. And we heard the other day that they've sold already 2,400 plus tickets to their STEM Day through their mailer.
That's
So
awesome.
again, some opportunities that are kind of fun stories to try to tell through some of that channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So just that STEM day there, they buy the list. Your point about the staff, how do you, what do you say to teams to keep their ticket sales staff from being lazy, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, I mean as we know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a driving industry and it's
Mm-hmm.
not for everybody. But there's definitely upside and there's definitely I started in ticket sales and my start in Las Vegas I feel like really kind of opened up a lot of doors throughout the course of my career based on who I met and just getting me out of my comfort zone. I never really saw myself as a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of younger kids who are kind of trying to get into sports these days. And it could be, hey, I want to be in social media or I want to be in PR or I want to be in the player side of sports, the GM side of things. Ticket sales really can open up those doors, but it can be
Absolutely.
very uncomfortable at first, and so it is a lot of phone calls. It's a lot of no's, like we talked about earlier, but it's kind of being that persistence of having those outbounds, taking those yeses and successes when you got them and feel
Mm-hmm.
good about them, and keep driving. And for me, when I started in sports, like I would look at a box score when I was a kid, and instead of looking at who had the most points last night or the most touchdowns or yards, whatever it is, I actually looked at the bottom and I looked at the to see what the attendance was. And
Mm-hmm.
again, being from Minnesota, we lost the North Stars here back in the day, and I just didn't want our market to lose any more franchises. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
us to keep those teams. So I always looked at like how successful are those teams from a revenue perspective. And so I started to think when I went to college, like, okay, I want to be in the revenue side of sports, and how can I impact that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first is as we say with Full House, is butts and seats. Like we need to get people in the building, and some teams can do it really well and some teams struggle with it. And so I always wanted to be kind of somebody who can kind of help put those butts in seats and drive that revenue to keep teams successful. And as you're keeping people coming through the doors, as we know, that's more more sponsorship revenue, it's more concession revenue, it's more
Mm-hmm.
merchandise revenue, and so all of that feeds each other and becomes the success story that sports is today.
I think ticket sales in professional sports, minor league sports, even college athletic, it oftentimes it is viewed as like, oh, I got to start there. But in all reality, if you can be successful there, like the path to become an athletic director, it's all about building relationships and helping people reach their goals and win-win situation. And same thing in the working in sports. If you want to be a general manager at a major league baseball team or hockey or soccer, whatever it is, like having a position is ticket sales and getting going, like it opens up so many doors, just like you said, but you're building the skill sets that you'll need to be successful at those roles. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And
Yeah, and I mean, you
go
mentioned like the on the school side of things. I mean, you think even like an athletic director. I mean, a couple of years ago, they probably didn't even see name, image, likeness coming. So NIL and just the revenue side and implications of some of that. And so, yeah, no matter what role you're in within sports, it kind of generally ties back to revenue. And if you've had some experience and background in that
ahead.
area, and again, you may not stay there your whole career, But when you look back on your career at the end, you'll be thankful if you do have some revenue experience.
Yeah, I remember my first week, Hickory, North Carolina. Our GM, Dave Haas, he looked at me and he said two things. Number one, you're going to call someone who's dead, right?
Yep.
It's like, well, golly, okay,
That
right?
might be
Like,
that 5%. Yep.
yep, you just have no idea. And then confidence comes from having some sort of success. So just keep going, man. So it was like, all right,
Absolutely.
I just got to keep smiling and dialing. So I think
Absolutely.
when teams are buying lists and what have you from you guys, having that list, they just smile, dial, and it's all part of, if you do a postcard, you do the email, it's all part of it all to be able to make some money here. Let's shift a little bit towards kind of some digital marketing trends. So there's a lot to do about the websites. They're getting thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even some websites, millions of visitors. But sports teams' websites only convert at like 3.5% on the really good end, but on average, it's like 2.5%. So we can't tell who's going to our website oftentimes when we're pixeling them with meta ads and so forth. But is there things we can do from a postcard perspective?
Yeah, so we actually have a product that we've been doing the last couple of years that's had some good success with called Postcard Retargeting. We call it. So it's basically taking some of that website traffic that, again, you may have not known in the past or abandoned their cart before they purchased tickets or whatever that might look like. And so it's actually grabbing that information from their computer, their IP address, like you say,
Mm-hmm.
and then having a postcard design ready to print overnight. And as soon as it triggers from the website, the postcard will be there 3 to 5 days later. So you think of like digital retargeting, very similar concept. But again, going back to putting your physical brand in their hands, this will land in the mailbox 3 to 5 days later. And it won't, it might seem a little big brotherish, like, hey, I think I was just on their website, but it's kind of a newer product where it's like, it's just kind of a nice little follow-up to kind of re-trigger, let's go back to the website and maybe purchase those tickets now. And there are a lot of new technologies now that do have the capability of identifying. And so we're getting into some of that. And I think there'll be some more that we'll have to talk about here in the next few months.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly kind of that new area of opportunity is who's on your website and how can we reach out to them from a warm lead perspective.
Yeah, I think that's such a marvelous idea because if you think about, you had 100 people to your website, 97 aren't buying anything. They're clicking around, looking at the schedule, looking at your merchandise, and just bouncing off. How do we get them to come back and convert? And if you can get some of those to come back, you're paying for the leads, you're paying for the mailing. If you can get them to come back, and as long as you know, if I can get them to come, my average order value is $40. I can get them to buy that. We're going to be okay. We're going to make money here. So oftentimes teams forget to look at the data related to ticket packages. Like what's the average order? How many tickets are they buying? How much money? What are they buying in the merchandise? Typically they do per cap, which just drills it in by game. But if you're looking at a season, I think that's such great because you say, hey, I'm willing to spend $5 to go get and make a sale knowing that I'm going to make 40 on this end. So I'm going to do that all day, every day. So it's glad that you guys have something like that. Any other digital things that you guys have coming or similar to the retargeting that might be able to help teams?
Yeah, we do a lot in the space, the digital space too, where a lot of teams might think of it as like the geofencing side of things.
Mm-hmm.
We actually drill down literally to the buildings, the walls of a building. So it could be a sports bar or sporting goods store or athletic complex, and you can start to tell kind of the people that are coming in there, and really be able to capture those mobile IDs. And then from there, as they go back to their daily lives of work and school and everything else, you can start to reach them through desktop, mobile, and even honestly OTT streaming ads as well. So kind of some fun things there in the digital space. When you say digital, like I was at the National Sports Forum here just a few weeks back, and probably the biggest topic that was out there at the National Sports Forum was AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does that look like? I think that's going to be a very interesting thing. I don't know if anybody necessarily has the secret sauce or all the answers currently, but there's definitely teams using it for ROI today. And for me, I mentioned Steve DeLay and John Spolstra earlier, but I just want to make sure like teams don't get lazy on the
Mm-hmm.
sales side with AI. But there's huge upside there in terms of warm leads and what does that help set up and tee up for your sales team. Certainly some benefits to it. It's just how as salespeople do we not get lazy behind using it?
That's exactly right. So National Sports Forum was talking about AI. One of the things that I always recommend to teams that ask me is you can use it to help write copy. I think that's a super simple way to be able to do that. So if I want to target moms and sell birthday parties, you throw that into Chat GPT, it can come up with some good headlines for your social posts, or great subject lines for your email, or content inside of your email that you would have to finesse a little bit, but it kind of gets the motor running a little bit. And that's where I encourage teams to use it. Are there some other ways that you heard at National Sports Forum that teams can start using AI?
Yeah, a lot of what the conversation was focused around there was warming up the prospect or the lead and then be able to hand it over to the sales team, basically ready to go or almost ready to purchase at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was even in the sponsorship space they were talking about, which I found pretty interesting because those are
Mm-hmm.
obviously large revenue
Mm-hmm.
amounts tied to some of that. So teams were talking about how it has worked, schedule appointments on even the sponsorship side. So I'm interested to see kind of where that evolves to and what that looks like. But yeah, definitely an exciting space.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I'm glad you guys have your fingerprints all over the pulse of what's happening, not only just on the AI world, but just helping teams get leads and do things and sell more tickets faster by coming to you guys and buying leads and doing postcards and really taking the steps in that direction, because that works, right? These old school tactics still work. A lot of teams just want to do all these new fancy shiny object things, and I always just run the basics. If you just run the basics, you're going to be successful. So
100%. And a lot of staffs, as we know, are pretty lean and mean. It's like you have a lot to do in your day. So
mhm.
we're just trying to be there to help kind of maximize your efforts throughout that. And that's where, like, going back to AI, I mean, that's, you talk about just writing copy. I mean, it's just simple things like that that can help kind of free up time to do other things in your day that are certainly focused on the revenue side of things.
Fantastic. Well, if teams are interested that have not reached out to you or now thought of some other ideas, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Our website is fillthehouse.com, and my email directly is michael@fillthehouse.com. So yeah, feel free to reach out with questions. We love just to brainstorm ideas or, work through any challenges you might have. But yeah, definitely appreciate the time here today.
You got it. And just appreciate everything that you have been able to do to help teams, because at the end of the day, it's all about just getting more people to their games, selling more merchandise, growing the brand. Any other success stories you want to share before we finally wrap up?
No, I don't think so. Like I say, I just appreciate the time and really certainly just I really enjoyed the opportunity to just connect with people like yourself. It's just fun to talk tickets and talk industry and kind of just share some ideas that hopefully trigger a thought or an idea within teams that you work with as well.
Fantastic. Well, I'll make sure I put your contact information as well as a link to the website in the show notes. And looking forward to having teams reach out and sell more tickets.
Awesome. Thank you again.
All right.